first I want to start with your experience with offering a product that require some form of habit breaking, uh, probably pushback. In this case, people who just love their coffee and they just can't give it up. Like, how do you
Yeah,
respond to that as a brand?
yeah. I mean, well, when I started the company, I didn't, I was really just bringing to market something that I had been drinking for myself and something that I had personally found a lot of value in. Um, and, when I think broadly and look at culture and, kind of take my personal experience and, you know, ponder whether or not there are others that are having a similar experience, for me, it was like graduated college, joined the workforce. Next thing I know, I'm getting invited for a cup of coffee. Next thing I know, I'm using the office espresso machine, and then all of a sudden, I'm buying a French press at my house. And there's a lot of benefits to caffeine, a lot of benefits to coffee. You research on the internet, it could say it could help your heart, it could help your brain, it helps various dimensions of your health. There's no real discussion around downside, which is interesting because when I started to look into this more, um, mainly because I was experiencing, probably at first it was just like I wasn't getting good sleep, and then I was experiencing, anxiety during the day. And I think being a creative, especially being a creative, when you're feeling a little bit anxious, when you're feeling a little bit fight or flight, it really does not jive well with creative pursuits. There's a lot of research that discusses creativity and flow state, and you want to be alert, you want to have energy, but you also want to feel psychologically safe to kind of explore out of bounds ideas and kind of draw these connections together. And I was just feeling kind of held back in some way, and I was like, I wonder if it's this caffeine thing. And caffeine is a psychoactive drug. It's the most used psychoactive drug on the planet. I think what's different about the caffeine drug versus other drugs is that when it's disguised as a drink, no one talks about the dose. So, for example, a 12-ounce cup of Starbucks Pike's Place, like one of the most popular coffees on the planet, right? It has 235 milligrams of caffeine in it. Most people probably don't know, is that a lot? Is that a little? If you go to CVS and buy a caffeine pill, it'll have 100 milligrams of caffeine in it. And,
Wow.
it's pretty common to meet somebody who drinks 3, 4 cups of coffee a day, which means that they could be drinking 800 to 1,000 milligrams of caffeine a day, which means that it's the equivalent of taking like 10 caffeine pills, throughout the day. Um, you know, It'd be like if you met somebody and or you worked next to somebody and every hour they're popping a caffeine pill, you might be like, that's a little odd. But when it's disguised as a drink again, it's normalized and in many ways kind of encouraged. And so when I started to explore, I love the ritual, I love the warm beverage, I love, doing something repeatedly to kind of trigger that flow state, trigger creativity. And so I was just like, what if that ritual could be more than just a vessel for high amounts of caffeine? Not saying no caffeine, but just moderation, the right amount to give me enough energy, enough alertness to inspire creativity and flow. And so instead of having high doses of caffeine, I had a small amount, and then I added mushrooms to give me the focus, the immune support, all these other benefits, but without the jitters, without the crash, without the anxiety, without the messed up sleep. And I felt amazing. At that time, I assumed everyone around me didn't need it. They were fine. Especially with men, we don't really talk about our feelings. And, it's toughen up, hustle, sleep when you're dead. But as I started bringing this concoction with me to the office, people would ask me what I was drinking. And that was the aha moment for me, where I was surprised to find that actually there were a lot more people that were trying to drink less, quit their afternoon cup, or, maybe quit altogether. And so for me, I launched the company to, share this thing that helped me with that, to people who might also be struggling. And so I didn't do market research in that sense of like, this could be tough, this could be an uphill battle, I'm going to get people to change habits. It was more like, I think when you look at culture, there's a lot of people struggling with mental health. There's more and more studies coming out about that. Um, Whether it's clinical anxiety or just common anxiety, they're all going in the wrong direction, right? And so with my background being in design and branding, um, I just set out to create something that was disruptive. And I think the first marketing message that I led with was, I'm not mad at coffee, I'm just disappointed. So I made something better. And for those who, there are people who are totally fine with, you know, pretty high amounts of caffeine. And then there are people who really struggle with even small amounts. And a lot of that is just variance in what's called the CYP1A2 gene. And if you take like a 23andMe test or something like that, it'll let you know if you're a high metabolizer or a slow metabolizer for caffeine. And if you metabolize caffeine slowly, which around 50 to 60% of the population does, it stays in your system longer. All of those kind of negative side effects that you get from too much of it are just more pronounced. So really, I launched the company to speak to those people who are either aware of trying to reduce their caffeine content or maybe haven't even considered it because they've just been drinking it for so long they forgot what it feels like to feel normal. And I love the challenge of um, inspiring curiosity in people and having the potential to change someone's mind around something that could really benefit them. So that's why our whole company purpose is to create healthy minds through healthy habits by looking
Yeah.
at the things that we do repeatedly that are negatively contributing to our mind and providing a healthier alternative for those things.
Yeah. Well, the inspiring curiosity part of it is definitely working with me. So, I mean, something like this is like a habit change. It's just
Yeah.
one of the hardest things to do, but at the same time, it's a process, right? It's a little bit of an educational. And I actually want to fast forward to some of my other questions because you immediately dived into some of the subjects near and dear to my heart. Um, like, you're talking about creativity, you're talking about flow state. You know,
Yep.
I can never pronounce his last name, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. You probably read his flow book,
I've
right?
heard of the
So,
book. I haven't read that book yet though.
this is one of the other ones. So I'm like, you know, since you have a design background, that also crosses off my other questions. I was going to say, why is mud water so beautiful? So that explains it.
Yeah,
But
I'm
so,
also a fine artist too. So when I'm not designing and working, I spend a lot of time just in front of a canvas, and I think that's a unique experience where you really become in tune with your mental state and how your mental state affects your creativity and flow. And then eventually that leads you to look at, okay, well, what I put in my body, how does that influence my mental state? Yeah.
yeah, so I think about this a lot. Creativity, state of flow, deep thinking, deep focus, resulting in great ideas.
Yep.
And then that kind of turning into awesome products. So, like, let's kind of fast forward to the personal part of it. I mean, you seem to be a person who truly cares about mindfulness and wellness. How does
Hmm.
wellness play into your routine to come up with great new ideas for Mudwater?
Yeah, I think, as a team, um, I don't know if wellness is the word or it's more like this new kind of word of like mental wellness. And I think it goes back to kind of, what I was speaking to with creativity. It's creating a safe environment to explore sort of the bounds of our psyche is ultimately going to lead to creative ideas and sort of novel connections, new ways to look at things, new ways to present something. And so one of the ways we do that is before most of our meetings, all of our all hands meetings, all of our board meetings, we start the meeting with 5 minutes of mindfulness. So we'll typically do a breathwork practice, a guided breathwork practice, and most of the time that's followed by just like a couple minutes of silence, which is interesting. um, especially in a remote environment, I think it's important. But like, our days are filled with meetings. You're on Zoom, then you're going to the next one. And so first and foremost, it's just about creating just a pause to bring presence and sort of purpose and intention to why we're meeting in that particular meeting. So it could be, I could be going from a conversation with an investor, and then the next conversation is around creating, a successful marketing campaign. So creating a switch into those two different mindsets, one being much more analytical, the other being much more creative, I think is very important. And using practices like breathwork meditation are a great way to do that. And then also we encourage or support our team's curiosity in developing their own routines, things that work for them. Because I don't think that there's a one size fits all approach here. Um, but we share with our team practices like gratitude, meditation, cold plunging. Even we do like quarterly challenges where if you do 66 days, which is kind of the habit building threshold, we even have random acts of kindness where it's just like reaching out to someone, buying a drink for the person behind you. These like random moments where you're bringing presence and kindness to your day. All of these things, could potentially for a certain person be sort of a lead domino in kind of creating that psychological safety, creating that sense of self, creating presence that ultimately I think leads to amazing ideas.
Do you have a morning ritual, Shane?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, it's so important. I just became a father as well, so my time.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, he's my son's almost 2, but those two
We're
years are
similar.
pretty
Mine
wild.
is 3.
Okay, those 2 years are very wild, especially on mental health and just overall health, right? Like your time is a lot more condensed and a little bit more erratic at times, and then your sleep is pretty hard to come by. So my morning routine, I I wake up, I hydrate is like the first thing
What
I
time do
do.
you wake
So
up?
I wake up around, my alarm set at 6, um, and depending on if my son woke up, if he didn't wake up throughout the night, I'll probably wake up at 6. If he woke up 3 to 4 times, I'll get out
Same.
of bed at around 7.
Same.
And then I typically will drink like 2 big cups of water. I like also adding like an element, getting some salts and into my into my body at that point, and then I brew up a cup of mud water um, every morning, and then I go down in my garage. I have a red light, so it's a red light therapy, and I have a meditation pillow, and I do a 10 to 20 minute just sit under the red light. Um, I call it kind of it's like a meditation. It's also a prayer in a way. It's kind of not necessarily to any one religion, but more so tuning into the the force that is bigger than myself. Um, and then I do some movement, some stretches, and then I have a cold plunge. And so I'll do a 3 minute cold plunge, and that's hard. To me, that's like I'm getting kind of the hardest thing out of the way, the thing that gives me the most resistance pretty much every time, even though I do it every day. Every time I'm like, a part of my mind is trying to make an excuse why not to do it. And typically during the cold plunge and the stretching, I'm listening typically to, you know, a, an inspiring book. Right now, I'm listening to of the power of positive thinking,
Yeah, I have it.
and so I put that on audio form. That's kind of just playing in the background, and and so yeah, I pretty much do that, and then I go to the gym, and then I go to work.
Very nice. So in 1 year, when your son is 3 years old, like mine, they sleep a little bit better. So then I just pulled back my 6 a.m. to 5 a.m. So now I get up at 5. I do 1 hour of morning ritual myself, but
Ye-
instead of mud water, I still make the coffee.
Yeah,
I try different blends and things like that. But I could be persuadable. So let's see.
yeah. I
uh,
mean, what's interesting is just finding your natural baseline is cool to do every once in a while, you know? So it's like more take a couple weeks, maybe bring the coffee out, see how you feel. It's going to take a little minute, a minute. You're going to feel pretty crappy for while you go through withdrawals. There's one interesting thing just on that. The American is a mental health disorder. It's obviously a
yeah,
short-lived
I
one,
believe it.
but that's how severe it can be. But then from that baseline, you might be a fast metabolizer of caffeine and totally able to handle hundreds of milligrams a day. But I think there is a lot of benefit, you know, and we've acquired well over 1 million customers, and just hearing their stories, there's benefit in finding the right amount for you.
Yeah. Can you walk me through the product development process at Mudwater, um, when you're thinking about new products? But it
Yeah,
looks
for sure.
like there hasn't been. So there's the cacao, there's the matcha, there's the turmeric, there's the rooibos.
Hmm.
Or is it mostly settled now? Or do you think about new launches this year and going forward?
Oh yeah, I mean, we're thinking long term, right? So there's gonna be constant evolution. Um, I think in right now, the way I view it is, you know, again, the why we exist, very similar to Patagonia's why they're here to save the planet. Like as a company, we're here to save the mind. So that's kind of our why. And how we do that is by looking at unhealthy habits that a lot of people partake in. So one being how people find energy, like what are the habits and behaviors that people apply to find energy. And I think that for many, people overdo it on stimulants. So that's the unhealthy habit that our current products are looking to address. So our current line is called Rise. So it's Rise is all about looking at the habit of how we rise, how we wake up, create, become productive, and creating healthy alternatives for that. And then we also have the product that you have, which is Rest. And you might think, well, that's way on the other side of the spectrum, but really I see it as one and the same, because the best morning ritual really starts at night. It starts the night before. And so, you know, if people slept better, they probably would feel like they're less reliant on high amounts of stimulants to feel energy. But as a culture, you know, we sort of deprioritize rest and recovery. It's almost like that's for the lazy and non-productive. Um, with our rest product, we really wanted to challenge that too. I think we have a lot of substances, rituals, routines like cold plunging, all these things built around the morning. There's less ritual built around the evening as a culture, as a society, right? It's almost like the worst the worst thing is the absence of routine when it comes to sleep, almost. You know, it's like some nights I watch Netflix, some nights somebody, you know, was like, I'll take a nightcap, I'll drink some wine, I'll do this or that. All of these things can have a lot of detriment, and, you know, can make when you go to bed vary, and that also impacts sleep. So Rise, Rest, and then we also create a line of products that help people personalize the mug. So over time, you know, acquiring over 1 million customers, we listen to our customers, and we hear about, like, the first question I asked you was, how did you make it? And you're like, well, with oat milk, and some people would choose sweetener. And so one of the first product we actually launched after our original product was a creamer, and then the next was a sweetener. And so that allows
Right.
people to personalize their mug based on their desired flavor palette. And, you know, it's the same way that people drink their coffee. And then we launched alternatives, you know, alternative flavor profiles to those. So Rise, Rest, accessories. And then I think looking out to the future, there are a lot of other unhealthy habits that, you know, we partake in as a society. One being how we find nourishment, for example. And I think there's some amazing products out there, that are kind of examples, whether it's like an athletic greens or a meal replacement like Kachava, that are kind of approaching this like foundational nutrition, from a new angle. And so that's definitely a space that we could find ourselves in. And then another one that I feel more personally aligned with is how we socialize. So rise, rest, nourish. How we socialize is I think is a core part of human health, our community, and I think currently the habit that most people have around socializing is alcohol. And so, a natural alternative for that would be an alcohol alternative. And so those are that's kind of how we view things. We're just looking at like what are the most common behaviors that a lot of people share that are potentially detrimental to a good proportion of their minds, and what can we create that could provide healthier habit that could lead to a healthier mind around those.
Yeah. So let's talk about the ingredients. How do you source and select the organic, non-GMO ingredients for the products, and how do you think about differentiating through the ingredients?
Yeah, so I mean, we're lucky to have two food scientists on our team, and I think our fourth employee was a food scientist. She's still on our team, and then she hired another one to support her. Um, we're only our company is only as good as the products that we sell. And so we have a very rigorous product development process. At probably the top of the funnel, we're just constantly doing research on new exciting ingredients and compounds and research built around them, just so we know the puzzle pieces out there in the market. And then we come together. We have sort of a stages and gates process, and kind of the first stage is more of like a brainstorming session based on those principles of what are those unhealthy habits that a lot of people share. What are some healthy habits that we can build around those? We take that, and then we look at what are all these ingredients out here that are really interesting, efficacious, that have supply chains we could build around them, and then how can we potentially merge these together and serve both our current customer base and then potentially open up to new customers who maybe like you might be like, I'm not giving up coffee, but I am interested in improving my sleep. And then you might say, and I'm also interested in maybe reducing my alcohol intake. And so, there's various ways that we could bring people into Mudwater, and it doesn't have to be around any one of those routines. And so, yeah, through our stages and gates process, we kind of align all these things and just like chip away at refining like what is that next product to launch. So yeah.
Yeah. You answered this one a little bit. I wanted to ask about positioning new product offerings and how it works with the existing product line, where we talked about bad habits, positioning on unhealthy habits, socializing, what are the unhealthy habits around socializing, or people's routines and lifestyle choices. Is there anything you'd like to add about like how you think about positioning new products?
Yeah. Yeah. My philosophy on brand positioning is I think about it like an arrow. And, an arrow, I think about an arrow in kind of three parts. There's the tip of the arrow, which is kind of that short, very sharp tip. And then you kind of got the rounded stick, and then you got the feather at the end. So there's three parts to the arrow. And an arrow can't be shot backwards, right? You can't shoot the feather forward. You shoot the sharp tip forward. And so with a lot of our brand positioning, we like to lead with a message that, um, I guess some might call it disruptive or confronting. When I kind of spoke to like the original message I led with was, I'm not mad at coffee, I'm just disappointed. And that alone, that's pretty sharp. Like for those who have been drinking coffee for a decade, they're like, what is this guy talking about? This stuff's amazing. But the rounded part, and basically what that does is we just pierce somebody's attention span. So that's the tip of the arrow. And in marketing, especially today with social media, if you're not piercing someone's attention span, it's like shooting the arrow backwards. You're shooting feather forward, and it's not gonna stick to its target. So first, have a message that's sharp enough to pierce attention span, but then broaden as you go. So the round part of the arrow is more about relating to that person and kind of, in a way, softening the message and having it appeal to a broader audience. So I'm not mad at coffee, just disappointed, but really it's not about being against coffee. It's not about being against caffeine. It's more about this moderation message. And a lot of people are struggling with anxiety, jitters, not sleeping well, and too much caffeine can be a major culprit in that. So, okay, maybe at first you were kind of triggered, but now you're like, yeah, that's pretty reasonable. So sharp message, you're piercing the attention span, then you're reasoning to a broad audience. And then the feather, that's all about here's our solution, here's the social proof, here's how you find the target. That's the call to action, you know. And so for us, it's like we developed a blend that combines mushrooms and superfoods. It's all organic, gives you energy and focus, but with a fraction of the caffeine. You don't feel the jitters, you don't feel the downside. You're not having sleepless nights anymore. And then you might have some social proof, which is like we've served over, you know, a million customers. We have we have 50,000 five-star reviews. So don't take our word for it. Give it a try. Let us know what you think. So you kind of start sharp, and then you draw it out, and then you deliver a call to action. You know, you could look at that, you know, on an ad. In most of our performance marketing ads, we try to kind of deliver our whole brand positioning in sort of one 90-second statement. And then when you're thinking more broadly, that's also how we look at the market too. Just kind of everything we do. It's like we have this kind of enemy that people might view us as an anti this, but really it's more about you. It's about your mind, and it's about, you know, giving you agency over what you put into your body, inspiring curiosity around how what you put in your body affects your mind. Yeah.
Always curious about how brands use real world spaces. How
Yep.
does your mindfulness studio gather play a role in crafting new product ideas? I know you've been talking about that. I guess you mentioned that you go and bartend there sometimes.
Yeah.
And what
Tomorrow
other
night.
ways is it helpful to Mud Water? And do you think that this is something you'd like to also expand in other places as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah. So we just opened our space. I think this is our fourth or fifth full week of being open and running. Um, you know, and kind of back to our product development, you know, we're looking to help people rise, rest, you know, and so on, looking at these habits. And, you know, I spoke to socializing being one of the core things that humans need to do to thrive. And, you know, I think socializing the third location is something that coffee also sort of created and established, is creating, you know, it's not home, it's not work, it's kind of that in between. And so if we're going to create an alternative for coffee, we also have to create alternative for the experience that's built around coffee. And so from day one, I always knew that that was going to be on our roadmap. And we launched Gather, we opened Gather to sort of create that, to sort of look at, okay, we created an alternative for the beverage. What would it look like if we create an alternative for the experience built around it? And so what Gather is, it's a combination of a cafe, a mental wellness studio. We have breathwork, meditation, kind of different connection events. And then it's also a co-working space.
Mhm.
Um, you know, it's different from a normal like sterile like cafe or co-working space. There's a lot of plants. There's more ambient music. You can come and hang out for as long as you wish. And then obviously we also have these classes that are all about kind of tuning into self, introducing you to new habits and routines that can benefit your life. Um, and so in many ways, it is an expression of our brand positioning in real life. And what's really cool from a business perspective is I knew that we wanted to have an office, like a space that, you know, Mudwater employees could also come and work within. And, you know, just looking at traditionally what companies do is they go out and rent an office space. And probably 99% of companies' office spaces are loss centers, right? They're not profitable. And I started to think, well, why is that? We have a consumer brand. What if our office space was a profit center? And so what we created was a space where I come in and work. Our employees are welcome to come in and work. We have a remote team, so they don't have to. But also our community, our customer base can come in and experience our brand within it. And so yeah, it's a really amazing, experiment that's going very well so far. And, as to your question on where does it go from here, I think, what we're looking to do is create a blueprint. How do we merge those three things, cafe, co-working, mindfulness, into one profit center that has this halo effect, that helps our brand and also helps our acquisition. One of the biggest things we heard from customers like yourself of like, okay, what is this coffee alternative, this mushroom stuff? I want to try it, but I go to your website and it's a $40 starter kit. It's kind of a big hurdle to jump over for something you're not sure if you like. And so what this space does is allows people to come in and try the product, and not just try the product, but try it from a trained barista, that's brewing it in a way that you can make at your home, but it's really tasty, it's customizable, all of those things. And so, yeah, looking out to the future, I want to create a blueprint here. I want to create something that, is kind of hard to say no to when it comes to scale. But as of right now, we're just kind of we're building it, and where it goes is, we'll see what happens.
That's so interesting. I didn't know that it was also doubling up as office space.
Yeah,
That's cool. So, what are some of the marketing channels that work best for you when you're promoting your products?
yeah. I mean, it's really hard to beat the efficiency of Facebook, of Meta. Um, and I think you can do Meta well, you can do it great, and the difference between that can be very drastic when it comes to the unit economics of the business. And so we've had to become experts in crafting performance marketing for that channel. I think a budding channel for us is what we'd call like partnerships. Um, Partnerships can be, sponsoring podcasts is kind of one that's used broadly, but it's also like developing an ambassador program, an affiliate program, and then for those who are, maybe not ambassadors or affiliates, just a referral program. I think right now between 17 and 20% of our customer base says that they heard about Mudwater through a friend or family member, right? So through referral. Um, and a lot of that, when you think about just the name of our product, it's called Mudwater. So talk about sharp tip of the spear. People who share on their social channels or in their community, I'm drinking something called Mudwater. That kind of stands out. It's polarizing. People won't forget it, most likely. And so trying to, that's really an area that we're developing more, that we feel like, has naturally turned into this nice fire that we're trying to put gasoline on, is, really empowering our community to be the channel.
Oh, I have a couple questions, but since we talked about the name,
Mhm.
backslash versus forward slash, was that
Yeah,
a deep consideration?
um, uh, there, yeah, there's some interesting things to it. You know, I like zigging where other people zag. I like things that stand out. I think when it comes to marketing, um, again, the tip of the arrow, like you got to pierce someone's attention span, and we wanted it to look differently. Um, so that's one piece. The other is like something about backslash for me speaks to the inspiration that we draw from the past. So a lot of our ingredients, they've been consumed for thousands of years, cultures near and far. Um, and we're trying to be the bridge, to a lot of these ingredients that may be foreign to a lot of people. But we try to come, as a brand, we're trying to bring that to a more mainstream consumer, and we do that through, through things like humor and developing products that can do that. But yeah, I mean, I liked the natural symmetry of our name. You got three letters before and after the backslash. I don't think there's another brand in the world that's using a backslash in their
No,
word
no,
mark.
I don't think so either. Every time I have to type
Yeah.
it in, I actually never ever use backslash. So I have to look for backslash on the keyboard. I'm like, it's here,
Hmm.
forward slash is here, but backslash is here. But
Yeah. So I mean, you're just it could be an annoyance to some, but I think it also causes people to pause and reflect. And you know, to me, that's a really important thing that people can introduce more of into their life.
yeah, it's different. What are the top two problems giving you a headache right now?
Hmm. Me personally, it's just constant. It's been growth, right? So growing as a leader and as a person. When I started Mudwater in 2000, May of 2018, I had I'd been a co-founder of a business, but really played a more product role in that business. I'd never hired, managed, fired a single person in my life, so jumping into the deep end or jumping off the cliff and building the wings on the way down, going from starting this in a little commercial kitchen to having dozens of employees, a board, investors, doing high eight figures in revenue, like all of these things are like, you have to grow very fast. And it's almost like every 3 months I have to unlearn and relearn my role, what I need to bring to the table. Um, it's everything that I've wanted. It's also very hard. I want to reach my potential, and you only do that through doing challenging things and kind of throwing out the old and introducing the new. So that's tough. Luckily, I have a coach that supports me, and a leadership team that really supports me. Um, and yeah, as a company, I think as a company, we're going through a similar transition as well, where we launched really with one or two core products, all online, 99.99% direct consumer. That was my bread and butter, my strengths. And naturally, as companies grow and evolve, you expand outward, right? And you expand offline. We just launched in the UK. We just launched in Target. We just launched, a cafe space. So we have these new channels, these new markets. They all have different playbooks. They all have different challenges. Um, so I mean, they're all amazing opportunities, but they also will keep you up at night just because, again, as individuals on the team, as leaders, you have to grow fast, become fluent in these new languages in order to run them efficiently.
Final question: top two priorities for the year.
Last year was a lot about developing these new platforms, these new channels, these new markets for growth. We launched, I think at the end of the day, we launched 7 or 8 new SKUs. We have international SKUs, retail SKUs. We launched matcha turmeric last year. Um, and then we launched these, cafe, UK, Target. And so it's a lot about planting these seeds. And so this year is all about, kind of I don't know if it's harvest season yet, but it's a lot about nurturing those seeds to sprout, right? And so we we feel like we have the right butts and the right seeds to do so. We have these seeds that are going very well, sprouting, and so it's all just about staying focused on that. Um, Not getting caught up in like a growth mindset, growth wheel, and really just investing in the long-term vision, the long-term like strong growth. I like to call it growing strong, not fat. So just being very focused on what we think is going to get us to where we want to be, and not next year or the end of this year, but 5, 10 years out.